An interesting topic came up on our Discord channel this past week, and for today's critical thought, we're going to be discussing kind of the role or purpose when it comes to video game criticism, and is there an actual metric or standard that should be applied to video games? Over on our Discord, the topic came up about what is the role of what game design criticism will do to a game. What is the purpose of what we talk about here on Game Wisdom? And it's a tough question to answer because game criticism for a lot of people is still considered this mysterious or unknown topic to talk about. We're not talking about game reviews. Did I like a game? Yes or no? There's our review. Nor are we talking about rants of, developer is lazy or stupid and, how dare they make this game and so on. But what is the purpose of breaking down a game's design? And can that actually aid a developer? And it's a tough question because when we talk about this stuff, it doesn't really impact the overall state of that game, or at least not from the outset. Me saying that a game is bad or good doesn't magically give it or reduce its sales. If I say that I didn't like, a Game of the Year winning title because of its design, do they rescind that title? Probably not. And when we're trying to understand the role of what game criticism can provide, part of this has to do with this idea of what can we apply as a standard to games? Is there a standard? I would argue yes. And part of the reason for this discussion on our Discord came about when discussing games like Spelunky 2, Ghost Runner, La Mulana, and so on. These are games that have very entrenched and hardened fan bases. But when we come in and look at these games, there are issues with their design. Some apparent, some not so much. And do the hardcore fans care about this? No. Anything that I would say, it will be most likely discounted as you're not good enough, you're not a fan, you're not, part of this community, so on and so forth. And we see this a lot with very hardened and entrenched fans. That this game works exactly for them. So surely it must be perfect, right? Well, the problem and where game criticism or game design criticism comes in is that we need to apply, or we can apply, a high-level look and analysis to these designs. And it allows us to start to study why did one game work versus another. And part of this is that game criticism is hard to explain, like I said a minute ago. When I look at a title, we are not looking at this the same way as a superfan is, or as a game reviewer. We are trying to understand, did this game's design work, or did it not? What was the goal by a developer, and does the gameplay facilitate that, or does it get in the way? And these aren't easy questions to answer if you don't understand design. Like we've said, playing lots of video games doesn't make you an expert at learning game design. But for a lot of people, especially developers, just because you design a game, just because your game is out, doesn't necessarily mean that you know why it succeeded or why it failed. We can theory craft until the cows come home. But part of the issue, or part of the challenge of studying game design, is that we can start to spot commonalities, basic issues that are good or bad that can help a game or just completely doom it. And this stuff, in some cases, some people may view this as, mysticism, that I am, reading bones or, looking at tarot cards when I decide whether or not a game is good or bad. But there is a science to these discussions, or at least I like to think there is. As we've said, many people view video games as either art versus the business. and the two will never meet in the middle. But the truth of the matter is that they do meet, that there is an actual aspect to whether or not a game succeeded or failed. And as a developer, if you only focus on one side, that is not helping you out. It's not helping you grow. As we've said before, the bar of quality has been raised dramatically. You releasing a game does not automatically justify me giving you my time and money. And many of the games that we've played have serious issues that we can spot very quickly. I'll come back to that a little bit more in a few minutes. But for a lot of people who only look at games from either the art or the business side, they're not necessarily understanding why a game succeeded or failed. Some people think that games succeed just out of happenstance. Developer released at the right time of the month, under the right phase of the moon, they sacrificed a goat behind their house, and the game got picked up by PewDiePie as the process. But even though there are a lot of issues and a lot of risks that come with game design, there are ways to mitigate that with proper understanding of game design, of UI and UX, and so on. And what we see is that when a game fails, or fails in this capacity, it's oftentimes very hard from the outside to understand why. In many cases, it may be hard to understand from the inside why nobody's playing my game. Why did everybody refund this title? Now, the example that you see in the upper left is from Lovecraft's Untold Stories. It's an action roguelike that has some really great pixel art and an interesting way of kind of the design and storytelling. It's also borderline unplayable. And that's not hyperbole. People have said on the forums that one of the best strategies to play this game is to try and modify the config files and make it fairer. And the point is that the production of this game worked. The game was released. It's out. You can buy it. But where the failure comes in is with the design itself and how it gets in the way of what the developers wanted to do. And I could spend 5 to 10 minutes ranting on that, which we don't have the time to in this video because we're going to get very ranty to begin with. The point is that when I played that game, the issues that I uncovered, they didn't take hours of investigative, looking at this game with a fine-tooth comb. I found that within 10 minutes, and those issues just compounded on top of each other over the course of about 90 minutes, and I just said, I'm done. Threw my hands up and I refunded it. And to refund a game that I bought on sale is a very, big design sin. And this is where I feel this role of game criticism can come into play. That I believe there are standards. That there is kind of like a craftsmanship or a craft to game design that you can apply to regardless of your design. And just because there are 1,000,001 ways of building a game doesn't mean that there's 1,000,001 ways to design a successful one. And I like to think about it like this. How many of you would get behind the wheels of a $100,000 supercar that doesn't have brakes? Probably not too many of you. And this is what I think about when we talk about things like UI and UX design, onboarding, approachability, or just simply understanding good design. And even people who design games may not fully understand that. And that may be a bitter pill for some of you to swallow. When we've talked about this before, that I will never again have a new user's experience when I play a game. I have over 2,000 games in my Steam library. I am not a new user. Although, as Shark and you would probably point out, I've never played any of them, right? But when I look at a game, I take it apart with a fine-tooth comb. 20 minutes of me playing a game is a lot different than 20 minutes of reviewing a game. And I feel, like I've said, that there is a difference between game criticism and game reviewing. I've said this plenty of times in the past. I don't harbor any dreams of writing for IGN or Kotaku or Destructor or any of them because I don't really write reviews. My stuff is not as flashy, is not as exciting. But again, that's not my role. My job is to look at a game and see whether or not that design worked. And some of you may not think that there's a purpose to it, but there really is. And a lot of that has to once again has to do with understanding the mechanics or the craftsmanship of what it means to design a game. As I said at the start, just because a game gets 100 sales, 100,000 sales, it's game of the year or whatever, doesn't automatically say whether or not that game's design is good or bad. And it's very easy for developers to fall into this trap of, nobody complains, I must have done everything right. I'm sure every indie developer watching this right now is nodding their head yes, right? But the point is that just because you don't hear about problems doesn't mean that your game is problem-free. And as a developer, if you don't understand game design, you don't understand game criticism, you're not going to improve. And we've seen developers who kind of just get stuck in this rut of making the same game again and again and again. They never listen to feedback, they don't care about feedback, and they wonder why more people aren't buying their games. Video games or game production is very risky. Like we've said, there are games that have succeeded that in no way, shape, or form should have, just as there are games that should not have succeeded, managed to just blow things out of the water. We've seen all manner of titles succeed or fail. But there are ways to mitigate those risks. And a lot of that is just understanding the standard conventions of design, that there is a foundational level of what people expect out of a game. Now, there were attempts at doing this in the past. There was the Gamers Bill of Rights that I think Stardock tried to put out. This was in the early 2010s or late thousands. And that didn't really work too well in the end. But when we look at video games and the ones that succeed, we can start to pick out commonalities or common design trends about why these games work. And again, every game is different. And it's not just a case of comparing genre to genre or game to game. But it's being able to see that the developers put that extra care into the title. And we've said this before, when we play these games, that within moments of loading it up, it's like, you know what? I really like this. I'm in, I'm going to beat this game, or I'm going to play this for the next 10 to 15 hours. And I'm sure each and every one of you watching this right now has a game like that you've played. And trying to put into words why one game does that versus another is kind of the purpose of game criticism, and it's very hard to do. It's why there aren't a lot of people who look at games at this high level of analysis. But when we look at some of our favorite games, we can see that there's something special about it. That all the pieces are connected. The design works. Everything in this game facilitates the core gameplay loop. It makes you want to play this game. Nothing is annoying you, or even there are annoyances, they're too small or minimal to really care about. And I'll give you an example of this. We recently played on stream. This was a kind of like a deck building meets FTL, space kind of game. We had a developer on, we were playing this with him. This was the prototype. This was not even an alpha or beta build. This was just simply the latest version of his prototype, and we were all enjoying it. And even at that stage of the game, the developer was already implementing and thinking about onboarding and UI and UX. This game could still have a few more years of development. But at this stage already, we are enjoying what we see. And when you can get a game that's like that, you know you have something special. And like we said, there are still plenty of risk factors when it comes to game development, game production. What we are focusing on with game criticism, again, is the design and structure of that title. Because while art and aesthetics, while marketing will get people, will get them in the door, good game design keeps them there. And that is very important in today's market with refunds. Again, 15 years ago, somebody buys a game and they don't like it, they're stuck with it. Today, if your game pisses me off within 5 minutes, it's gone and you're out that sale and you're out that fan for the rest of your studio life. And if you do not understand why these games succeed or fail, and why designs work and don't, you're never really going to learn how to succeed. And we have seen proof of this with the many Me Too or copy games, where I am just trying to copy somebody else's success, but you don't know why that game succeeded. How many Darkest Dungeon clones that we've talked about? Slay the Spire, FTL, Minecraft, Fortnite, PUBG, and so on and so forth. And these games will often end up as being just a shell of the games they're trying to emulate, because the developer in question is not understanding why those games succeeded. And like we've said, game design is not magic. There is a science to this, whether or not you understand it. And the developers who end up succeeding understand that just building a game is not enough. You have to understand, what is my goal with this design? And are these elements actually working towards that or fighting against it? Like I said, with Lovecraft's Untold Stories there, the elements worked against it. And I've said this before, that it only took me 15 minutes to figure this out. Not hours, not days, not weeks of playing this game. And this is why it's important to understand game design. Because the issues that drive away people like this are never overt. Because if it is something overt, if it's something bad like your controls don't work, everybody on the same forum or wherever your message board, wherever you use, is going to tell you that. But when game design doesn't work, when it's not working as well as it should be, a lot of people will just say, I played it, I don't like it, and never talk to you again. And you will never know why somebody quits your game like that. And this is where that echo chamber effect comes into play. That all you're going to be left with are your hardened fans who say your game is perfect, don't change a thing, while you're sitting at maybe 50 reviews on Steam, or even less than that. And when you're trying to grow as a developer, like we've said, it is an iterative process. Your goal isn't to just design the same game 10 different times. Your goal is to grow over those 10 different games, so that game 10 better be a whole lot better than game 1. And if it's not, people aren't going to stick around. Like I've said, the bar of quality has gone up. If I don't like your game, I'm not stuck with it anymore. I can refund it. I can find probably several dozen, if not several hundred other examples of that design, probably done in 100 different ways, and could be magnitudes better than yours. And as we've said, there is art to game design. But at the end of the day, a video game is a product. It is meant to be played. And if I can't enjoy playing your game, why should I give you money? And as you notice, we've been talking for almost 20 minutes now, and there's no in-between break for this video. So we probably won't be going to a part 2 with this rant. But there is one to kind of summarize this, and for one final point. I do believe that there are standards when it comes to game design and game criticism. And what we've seen, like we've said, is that the games that succeed have everything put together. And to get at that, you have to understand what game criticism is. That it's not just talking about whether or not the game hooked you emotionally, or whether or not you have a jump button. It's about understanding if all the parts of your game are in alignment with each other. And more importantly, It's about representing that your game is a high quality. This is why, for a lot of people, and for myself, if one thing is out of place within the first 5 minutes of playing a game, that game is done, probably within another 5. Because if the developer messed up on that one thing, most likely they messed up on a lot more. And why, again, that I talk about the importance of control rebinding, volume sliders, just getting the craft and the foundation of your game right is mission 1. Because if none of that works, nobody is going to care how original or unique your game is. They don't care if you spent 5 years, 10 years, 20 years of this game, or 20 years of your life on this dream idea. All they're going to see is a broken product that is not worth however much money you intend to sell it for. And this, I feel, is where this goal, or where the role of game criticism can come in. It's about being able to expand a game's market. We have played many games that have very amazing designs to them, but very few people actually experience it. And part of it could be marketing, part of it could be production and sales on that side. But in a lot of cases, it's the design. Something is not working. Some people can overlook it. Again, that's where the hardened fans come in. But the majority of them do not. And what we see usually happens is that these games never get bigger. The studios never grow. And when we say grow, we mean going from having a potential audience of 200-300 people to maybe 700, maybe 1,000, maybe thousands of people. And for the studios who are around long enough to grow like this, again, we can see that they understand that there's more to game development than just making a game. You have to understand what pulls people into a title, what makes your core gameplay loop work. And it's not magic. It's not, just looking at the stars in the sky and using that to determine when to release a title. And like I've said, a lot of people, don't get this. They'll look at companies like Red Hook, Clay, Kit Fox, and so on, just say they just got lucky. Or, I don't know why they succeeded. I'll just make another Darkest Dungeon. I'll just copy Kit Fox and make Boyfriend Dungeon, or any one of their other titles, and I'll be successful, right? It doesn't work like that. And as we've said, the developers who grow to understand the foundation and the craft of game design and game criticism, oftentimes they're the ones who succeed. And more specifically, they're the ones who survive in this industry. We're not talking about a year. We're talking about going on 10 years, going on decades in this industry. And some of you may think that's a joke or that's never going to happen. But we've seen developers like Cliff Harris, Jake Burgett, Jeff Vogue, and so on, who have established niches for themselves and have succeeded. And they're always trying to learn and improve. And that's what you need to do. If you do not improve yourself, if you close off any criticism and any trying or any formal look at a design, you're just going to be spinning your wheels and wondering, why aren't more people buying my game? Because again, while having 100 fans, or let's say you only need 200 sales of your game to be successful. Again, I'm sure a lot of you are just laughing right now at that thought. But let's say you are in that position where 200 sales is enough for you to succeed. But that puts you in that position where you must rely on that same 200 sales or you're going to go under. If you can grow, if you can improve, you could have a potential audience of several thousand. And even if you only need 200 sales to succeed, your chance of success are now exponentially greater because you are making a higher quality and more just better crafted design. So, hope you enjoyed that rant. Let me know what you think in the comments below. As always, check out our Discord and Patreon link down below, especially again the Discord, because that's where we have these discussions and where a lot of our topics come from for these videos. Come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where is in the art and science of games. Until next time, take care. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed things, be sure to do all the liking and subscribing that the kids are doing these days. Check out our Discord channel link down below where we hang out and chat game design, and come back later tonight for our regular streamings. But that's it, and tune in for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.